Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for that very, very warm introduction, and to the entire CBST team, specifically Rabbi James, who made the invite, my co-conspirator and friend, for inviting me here tonight. CBST is the perfect place to spend Martin Luther King Jr. Shabbat with a community that has a long history of, am I quiet? Thank you. A long history of honoring the humanity of all people and pursuing justice, dignity, and a spiritual home for LGBTQ people, as well as racial, economic, and broader gender justice. My name is Phylisa Wisdom, and I'm the Executive Director of New York Jewish Agenda, or NYJA. I'm not a rabbi, but I spend a lot of time learning from and organizing with rabbis, and I will leave the Torah to them, the literal Torah. But tonight, on Martin Luther King Jr. Shabbat, which is also the last Shabbat of the current presidential administration, I'm holding close Martin Luther King Jr.'s teaching that the arc of the moral universe is long, but bends toward justice. And as Jewish New Yorkers, there is a place for all of us in the pursuit of justice. NYJA was conceived of and co-founded by two New York political professionals and two rabbis, one of which was CBST's Senior Rabbi Emerita Sharon Kleinbaum, who remains a board member and a mentor. NYJA advocates, organizes, and convenes on behalf of what we identify as New York's liberal Jewish community, those whose politics reflect their Jewish social justice values of equity, justice, and tikkun olam. Those same values call us to support democracy and pluralism in Israel, and a just future for both Israelis and Palestinians where they can live in their own thriving democracies. Many of us had been craving a political home that could hold all of these complexities. In New York, the most Jewish city in the world outside of Israel, we believe this broad set of politics is extremely common in our community, but wasn't represented as an organized voice in City Hall or in Albany, where decisions about New Yorkers' lives and priorities are made. NYJA filled that gap, and now our work is more important than our founders could have imagined just a few years ago. And the need for an organized, motivated, liberal Jewish base in New York is immense. Like many of you, I am afraid of what's to come after the inauguration on Monday. As it stands, I have pregnant friends afraid to travel through states with abortion bans, lest they have a complication and be unable to access care. There are trans people in my community who are thinking about how they'll access gender-affirming health care. I'm afraid of the threatened mass deportations. And I'm afraid of rising anti-Semitism. I'm sure all of us here are aware of the ways this incoming president has historically enabled and emboldened white supremacists, including those who spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that endanger us and our allies. I'm afraid sometimes of all of our ability to stay energized for these multi-front attacks on our norms and values. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I was a drum major for justice, peace, and righteousness. I am committed too to being a drum major for these things right here in New York." So many of the considerations Americans are making as we approach Monday are related to which state they live in, but with an additional awareness that some of what's to come will include federal legislation and executive orders. So living in a state widely considered to be more liberal offers some comfort, alongside some very real anxiety. New York is gearing up, as it should, to be on the front lines of the resistance against some of the most heinous things we know are coming. While these issues are numerous, we know, for example, that the anti-immigrant, anti-trans sentiment is strong and urgent. NYJA is supporting our leaders to resist these actions. For example, Attorney General Tish James just joined 10 other attorneys general to send a letter to the United States Senate opposing the Laken Riley Act, which would allow for the violation of due process and fair treatment of our undocumented neighbors based on accusations alone. Yesterday, in short order, we organized New York-based Jewish organizational leaders and rabbis, including Rabbi Klein, to sign this letter opposing it. This is one of many examples of ways New York can push back and register our dissent, even against the inevitable. Each of us has a role to play, to get creative about interventions that will protect New Yorkers. NYJA will support and engage with our leaders, urging them to be bold and brave. They too need to be the drum majors for justice, peace, and righteousness, and it's on us to remind them of this. So how do we do that? We have a network of leaders we organize with, state, local, and some federal elected officials, clergy, influential party donors and activists, organizational leaders, and others who we are mobilizing in support of our shared values. This state legislative session, which just began last week and runs through the first half of the year, we have a package of bills we're supporting related to migrants, housing, and education, as well as making our voices heard specifically on Jewish politics, including things like how anti-Semitism is combated in our state. We will be collectively lobbying and raising awareness about these important interventions to keep New York moving forward toward common sense, social justice-informed policies that ensure all of us can thrive. For example, this includes New York for All, which prevents New York State and local agencies from working with or sharing information with ICE. It also includes the Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act, which makes it possible for faith organizations to develop affordable housing on their unused land. Yes, this is a rezoning bill, which is not the most exciting thing to non-housing policy wonks, but sometimes pursuing the world we want to see means putting on our policy wonk kippot and supporting that kind of change. We're also going to be providing opportunities for those who see themselves as part of New York's Jewish liberal majority to raise our voices by joining sign-on letters or attending a lobby day. It's important to name that our Jewish community, no matter what our politics are, is tired. Some of us feel burned by the coalitions we've seen ourselves as part of when Israel and Palestine are on the agenda. To resist what we think is coming domestically and in Israel and Palestine, our power lies in our ability to talk across lines of difference, to be true to our values, but be open to nuance. This is not a moment for retreating to our corners or for talking only with people we already agree with. This moment demands that we link arms with any allies we can in pursuit of our shared values, and that we build enough trust to be able to communicate when our partners cross lines. There will be attempts at both the national and local levels to drive a wedge between the Jewish and the liberal and progressive communities, and in the Jewish community itself. This is a tactic, and we must resist it. We are at our strongest when we're in solidarity here in New York and more broadly, and also when we have a political home to return to. The future I dream of is liberatory for all of us. It's where people have what they need to thrive. It's so easy to be overwhelmed by, to quote Rabbi Kleinbaum, the tsunami of hate that may be coming our way. I feel energized by digging in locally with people like you, by picking an issue or a few that are tangibly on the agenda in my city and state and making meaningful impact in that area. Our exhaustion and overwhelm serves those who don't share our agenda, so we must pick ways to get engaged that lift us up and that make us feel part of our community and connect us with our neighbors. This is important not just because of the resistance we can create when we're strategic together, but because it's nourishing to commune with people who share our vision. There is a role for you and for each of us. There will be a flurry of activity in the coming weeks and months and opportunities for activism, but this is a marathon, not a sprint. I invite you to think about the role you want to play. Is it through CBST? Is it through organizations like NIJA or other advocates? Is it on protecting trans youth or reproductive rights? Is it direct service? Is it spiritual leadership? I'm making the case that whatever you choose, do it where you are. For me and for those of us in this room, that's New York, and we can't rest on our laurels and assume all will be okay here. There is joyous, liberatory, but hard work to be done here too. In the meantime, we should all hug our loved ones, take deep breaths, and keep coming to the places that provide spiritual nourishment. I'm comforted by the examples in both Martin Luther King Jr. and in our own community of how to use our power to create the kinds of cities, states, and country we want to be a part of. We can do this. See you in the fight. Shabbat Shalom.